Did everyone get the recording in progress thing? Hopefully. Um, awesome. Okay, so thanks again for all these awesome workshop ideas. I thought this was such a great, incredible chance to meet and get a little bit more context from you. Now it's my turn to give you a little bit more context for us, right? So I want to talk a little bit more about RJI's innovation philosophy, how we do our job, how this all ties back into the industry-facing series that I mentioned that I'm the senior editor for, Innovation in Focus. So when we talk as a team here, RJI thinks about innovation in a couple of ways. It's really experimental, right? We're thinking about building solutions, experimenting, trying new things, leaving room to fail, leaving room to succeed, right? Throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks, essentially, right? All of these experiments that we are primarily interested in for innovation have to do specifically with how we work. So how do journalists work? What's their workflow like? How can we make that better? What we do in terms of what our mission is, whether or not we need to examine or try something new with the content that we're doing, anything and everything related to how the work is getting done and what the work is. That's our sweet spot for experimentation. And then finally, we'd be remiss if we didn't bring in the philosophy around serving the public. Ideally, if you're a journalist, you got into this because you care about serving the public. You want to make sure that whatever you're doing is something that is useful to your community, right? And so we try to keep that at the heart of innovation here. We try to have a philosophy here wherein it's not so much about just innovation being straight up tech, although we love tech too, and we like to experiment with tech. That's not all it is, right? And so we're looking at how do we think differently about something? How do we make sure that we're experimenting, we're riffing on how we do the work, what we do, and how to serve the public, and also keeping in mind greater challenges with our industry, and tying that back again to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that we're not leaving those things behind as we talk about moving forward, because really that's at the core of sustainability for our industry. So that's our philosophy in general about innovation. Now let's talk a little bit more about the publication side. So Innovation in Focus is a series where we talk about all the experimenting that we're doing with partner newsrooms. These experiments have a wide range of different topics. It can be a new idea, it could be new tech, it could be a system, it could be a structure. It could even just be riffing on a specific idea and talking about who's doing this idea or trying something new in journalism. It could be a new storytelling method. There's really a wide range, right? We want to keep this accessible. We want to be focused on making sure that whatever we're trying in Innovation in Focus becomes a free resource that the smaller, more community-centered, lower resource newsrooms have a chance to try, right? We think that too often innovation conversations become these really crazy, nebulous, and like honestly intimidating conversations wherein there's too much happening and it seems like you're biting off more than you can chew. We're not about that life, right? So we are much more interested in keeping the innovation accessible, and that's one of the core things that we're doing with this series. So really, it's all about solving challenges for local journalism. If you follow along in the Google Doc agenda that I sent in the chat earlier, and I'm just going to go ahead and paste it one more time, you'll be able to follow along with some of the links here, including to the series if you want to check out what we have been doing recently with it. So let's talk through the structure of how we do these experiments that sort of feed our content for Innovation in Focus. So we organize these by having student innovation staffers who come from the Missouri School of Journalism here, and they help us tackle different projects with our partner newsrooms that we work with. So they tackle the experiment with the partner newsroom, they apply it to real world journalism that's happening with that partner newsroom, and then they talk about the process of that. They talk about what they learned from that time, and they publish the lessons learned, guidance, and any other sort of action items that other newsrooms can learn based on what their experience was with the partner and what they tried, right? And so it's really about creating guides and trying to sort of lead people to feel empowered to try different innovative projects themselves. So these students that work with us, they're fabulous. They get to collaborate with newsrooms. They test, they implement, they work very collaboratively, right? And so they're team players. They get together, they meet, they better understand what the newsroom's needs are, and then they figure out how to do a project. Oftentimes they bring their own ideas as innovation student staffers, but we're also really interested in hearing the ideas of our partners, because this at its core should be about helping solve a problem that the newsroom has in the first place. So that's sort of how this gets organized. And then each project addresses something that has to ultimately be useful to local journalists, right? So whatever we're doing, whatever we're experimenting on, whatever guide we're creating, it needs to be useful to the wider public. That is our mission, is to create these resources to keep it accessible, right? And so I want to be careful not to say that whatever is tested, we want there to be room for failure, in the sense that maybe we test something out and we find throughout the process that maybe there are some things to be cautious about. That's okay, as long as it's something that we're informing folks about and we're keeping it useful for other newsrooms to use. So we've talked through the philosophy and a little bit about the structure and what our publication looks like. I'd love to talk through a couple of quick examples just to get you thinking, right? So here's a recent one that I tackled on expanding credit. This was a look at how do we expand credit beyond the byline system. I just, from luck of the draw, seem to have a lot of radio folks on this call, which is fantastic. And full disclosure, I think that radio folks tend to do a lot better job with this type of work than maybe some of the traditional, more like writing-based outlets do. But in any case, the Expanding Credit project was really just about how do we build it into the workflow and think through who everybody is that touches all of the work that ends up in the news, and how we can give them credit without just having it be attributed to like one reporter in a byline, because that misses out on so many folks, right? It's copy editors, it's fact checkers, it's folks who did graphic design or illustration or data visualization work, right? It's folks who, we're photographers. There's so many different touch points of who ends up touching the article. It's also folks who are putting it out into the world, right? On social media, or doing that sort of audience engagement work. And so really this experiment was about taking the time to think through not only who are we missing when we talk about who gets credit for the work, but also how can we build that into the workflow, and talking about who does this well at a higher level. So there's a Q&A with Alex Sujan Laughlin. I highly recommend checking out where she talks through a little bit more about what it really means when journalists don't do a good job of giving credit to everyone who has their hands on the work. And from all of this, coming back to building a resource, we've built a public brainstorming guide. So if your newsroom would like to tackle something like this, maybe you're light years ahead because you already work in radio and you're so used to crediting producers and everyone involved, which is great. But if not, there's a public guide that you can take a look at and sort of help you to go through a similar process with your outlet. Another recent project that we've done, a data context toolkit, which was done by our previous innovation student staffer, Gabriella Meisner. Gabriella took a look at how we contextualize the many, many data sets that so many reporters get. There's a lot of data journalism out there that is just based on so much data. As we know, with technology, we're tracking more things than we ever have before. And the core of this project is really about giving some concrete steps and a checklist for how we frame those conversations. What are the important questions that we have to ask when we get the data, as opposed to just saying all data is golden, all data tells us what we need to know, right? And so a lot of this is about representation in research, demographics, what methodology looks like, the things that we think often get taken for granted, giving a little bit of a guide on how to really ask the right questions as you're looking through a data set. So again, this is one of the projects where we created a public data context guide. So that's something that if you'd like to try out this process on a data project in your newsroom, you can go ahead and pop over to that Google Doc and use the checklist on a real data set that you're using. And there's a Q&A with Karen Landman, who is a fantastic science and public health reporter at Vox, and also has a career in medical public health, talking about a little bit more of what we need to pay more attention to when it comes to all the data that journalists are grappling with. So lots to do there. The final example project that I kind of want to walk y'all through, just so that you have a chance to see what we've been doing recently, and maybe this gets the gears turning for a little bit more projects, is an inclusionary zoning tracker that Annie Gentleman, did with Atlanta Civic Circle. So basically using Flourish to create an interactive map looking at zoning developments and really getting a better sense of what's being built, where is it, what are the ramifications of that, really thinking through the data visualization and the maps. And the background story on that gives a really good step-by-step guide to how the maps were built so that other folks can do it. It also links out to a bunch of public data if you want to play around with making your own. So I think there's a lot there. And you can go back to the Atlanta Civic Circle story that resulted in the real world journalism. We link the real world journalism in all of these different projects as well. So if you feel like checking these out, all of these example links, again, are available for you in the agenda. So no need to furiously copy them down because they're all in that Google Doc that I shared. So yeah, we've talked through a little bit more related to our philosophy. We've had a chance to get together and do some brainstorming and talk to each other about ideas. The final thing here that I'm going to leave you with is really a call to action. I am very eager to collaborate with you all, and I'm looking to put out the call to do more work with various newsrooms, not just within the Missouri School of Journalism, although I love working with them too, but also outside of that to see how we can do a little bit more outreach with innovation and focus. So if anything that we talked about today is resonating with you, if you want to stay in touch, even if you're not sure and you just want to be in the email list, I highly recommend that you head over to this bit.ly link over here and fill out the form. It's really simple, really easy. We're just asking for your name, your newsroom, your title, and then your idea. Tell us what you're going through. Tell us about your challenge or any questions that you have. I will use this to follow up later. And I have also taken a little bit of notes throughout. And I want to mention as well, although we didn't record the portion where we were workshopping because we wanted to keep it respectful of folks' privacy and make it a little bit easier to share with everyone. Everything else from this session is recorded. So I will be going ahead for any participant who came today and sending out the recording to everyone so that you can review at any time. I think that this has been an awesome session. I just wanted to leave you with a couple of final thoughts. If there are still questions, if there's something else that you want to ask of me, this isn't your final opportunity. From here, like I said, I will be emailing you out. Feel free to shoot me an email back if you want to ask me something. I try to be as accessible as possible to you. You can also fill out the form and you will be sure to hear from me in that way as well. Like I said, I'll send out the recorded session, and I want to say thank you, of course. I really, really appreciated your time. There's a QR code here if you want to use it to go straight to the Innovation and Focus series. And here's my email up here. I'm at rodenbaum@rjionline.org, and I would love so much to hear from you. Thank you again so much for your time, and that's a wrap. Actually, since we're still here and I haven't ended it, if you have any questions, I guess I should say, you're still welcome to post them in the chat or raise your hand here since we've got 10 minutes. Anyone else who wants to take back their time, welcome to, but I guess since we're here, I might as well open it up again.
Hi.
Hey.
Oh, hi. Since you mentioned it, my thesis project was actually working with a newsroom on a reader revenue product, and I worked with the Columbian Missourian, and we basically did a A/B test on a reader revenue product. And so, if that's the type of is that the type of experimentation you are thinking about for this project, for what you're doing? Okay.
Great question. Yeah. So definitely we're interested in doing experiments related to revenue too. I think that that's obviously a great opportunity. Not that I want to force people to collaborate, but if you're interested in collaborating, I think there's several folks who have that on their mind a lot. So that's definitely something that is a subject matter that we would be interested in tackling, because I think it gets back to, again, that overall philosophy question of how we're doing the work. So yeah, revenue experiments are welcome, and would be happy to work on something like that in the future.
Yeah, and I think it's not just revenue. It's more. I would like to kind of upgrade it to basically loyalty, right? You know, and basically a conversation around loyalty programs for newsrooms. Yeah. So anyway, okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for coming. I so appreciate it, and hopefully that answered your question.
All righty.
Brandon, I see your question in the chat here about whether or not there will be another workshop like this in the near future. I don't have one planned on the books, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't put one up there. So if you're really interested in getting your supervisor involved, I'll see what I can do. I think this has been a helpful conversation, and we're looking to put out the call. So my answer is not definitive, but it's a maybe right now, and I'll definitely follow up with you individually.
What's the bit.ly link again?
Oh, here, I can go back 1 second. There you go. For the form, I assume is what you were asking for. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Any other questions for folks who have stuck around? Let me just check that I didn't miss any in the chat.
I just went there and it doesn't seem to be, something's wrong. I'm getting a 404 error.
Oh no. Okay.
Could be my browser.
Yeah, just in case, I'll make sure that I get that corrected for folks when we do this. But this bit.ly link is like a shortener. So I think that the full link is actually on that agenda Google Doc that I sent out. So you might be able to access it that way. It's at the bottom of the helpful links list where it says the partner form. So hopefully that works. But if not, just in case, I'll send out a note. Now that you've told me, I'll pay special attention and make sure that that link is working.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? I don't see any that I missed in the chat, just a lot of great conversation. All right, well, thanks so much for bearing with me. I'll let you have back these measly 7 minutes. I really appreciate your time, and it's been a wonderful conversation. Y'all have a great day.
Bye-bye.